UFC Vegas 50, Draftkings has released the salary so we can take our first look. You can call me Kunith, let's make some money this week. Last week, we were humbled. Now, would I be saying that if Tim Elliott wasn't a dirty rat and if Kennedy Nzechukwu could keep his fingers to himself? Probably not. But we were dead wrong about Greg Hardy. We went opposite of what our process is. Striker versus grappler, we went striker. When we do that, we lose. And the Renato Moicano pick was just me getting too cute. I was getting too big for my britches, and I'm sorry. But don't worry, we are laser focused on nothing but success this week. And we're going to start right at the top of the slate at 9,600. We have Magomed Ankalaev. He's our favorite in our main event this week, fighting Thiago Santos. Now, Ankalaev has been nearly perfect in the UFC since his debut loss to Paul Craig right at the last second of the third round. But outside of that, his fights in the UFC have largely been one-way traffic. He should be extremely popular on DraftKings this week, and it's for a good reason. He's better than Santos everywhere. He should have complete control wherever this fight takes place. We saw what Thiago Santos has become in his last fight against Johnny Walker, 38 years old, well beyond his prime, and very hesitant on the feet. Maheda was a destroyer a few years ago who threw caution to the wind, but we haven't seen that version of him in a long time. So Magomed Ankalaev wins this fight. There's no doubt in my mind. What we need to consider, however, is how many points is he going to score on DraftKings. He doesn't throw a ton of strikes. His knockdown rate is crazy. In most of his fights, he is scoring knockdowns, so that's pretty impressive. That's like Sean O'Malley, Josh Emmett. So that's 10 points each time, and also he has some of the best wrestling currently in the division. But Santos is dangerous, and that may cause Ankalaev to be careful and take fewer chances in this spot. And Magomed Ankalaev is pretty patient as it is. He finds finishes often, but he's not chasing these finishes. He just lets them come. So it's a high price to pay for a fighter that may be the winner of this fight, but one of the lower scoring main events that we've had in a while. So the pick for this fight is Magomed Ankalaev by decision, and on DraftKings, he's going to be real pricey. Probably going to be pretty chalky being the favorite in the main event, and at this price I don't know if I'll be able to get here. And not only is he the most expensive fighter on the slate, but he's $200 more expensive than the second most expensive person on the slate, which is Miranda Mavericks. Miranda Maverick is fighting Sabine Mazzo this week. For Maverick, in her last fight, she got dominated. Erin Blanchfield took her down at will. Maverick really didn't have much of an answer for the grappling at all, and now she's in a more favorable matchup against Sabine Mazzo, who is basically the opposite of Erin Blanchfield. Blanchfield is a strong, stocky wrestler, while Mazzo is a long, lanky striker. We have seen Mazzo dominated by opponents just based on physical strength, so when this fight is in the clinch, I expect Miranda Maverick to have a lot of success. But on the other side, when this fight is fought at range, I think that Sabine Mazzo is going to piece Maverick up. And Mazzo is going to have a 4-inch height advantage, a 4.5-inch reach advantage, and she's typically throwing about double the strikes on average of what Miranda Maverick is throwing. So this is a tough fight to call because on one hand you have a hype job who I'm not really all that impressed with, and on the other hand you have a prospect who has all the tools to be successful in this division, but doesn't really have the physical strength to fight off the wrestling and doesn't have the technique to make up for the lack of physical strength. Early in the week, I think that I actually like the underdog in this spot. I'm really not all that high on Miranda Maverick. I will say that she's fighting out of a good gym, so she's probably going to have a good game plan coming into this, but I like Sabine Mazzo this week. I think this fight is a lot closer than the line indicates. So the pick for this fight is Sabine Mazzo by decision. At 9,300, we have Matt Semelsberger. He's welcoming AJ Fletcher to the UFC. Semelsberger is a big favorite here, and it makes sense. He's the more experienced fighter, he's got big knockout power, and he's going to have a massive 8-inch reach advantage. And AJ Fletcher fought some cans outside of the UFC, so this is going to be a really big step up in competition for him. I do like the aggression and the wrestling from Fletcher, and I think he will have success in spots, but I do think that the experience, the reach advantage, as well as that power of Semelsberger, I think that's going to be the deciding factor. I don't see him pulling a ton of ownership at this price. I consider him to be very live for a knockout in this spot, but I do think a lot more people are going to go up to 9,600 Ankalaev and probably land on Miranda Maverick more than they would Matthew Semelsberger. But the pick for me is Semelsberger inside the distance. Next at 9,200 we have Song Yadong. He's fighting Marlon Morice this week, and it's hard not to like Song Yadong in this fight. When you think of Song Yadong, you think good chin, solid power. Or you think he's a burglar for not losing to Cody Stamann, Marlon Vera, or Casey Kenny. But he looked great in his last fight against Julio Arce, very measured and accurate on the feet. Marlon Morice at this point in his career really just struggles with two things. One is fighting for more than 5 minutes, and two is being punched. Morice in the last few years has been a shell of his former self in the octagon, and cardio-wise, he's looked terrible. I think that Morice is probably the better striker. I think that he probably has more power for the first few minutes. I think he's more technically sound. But his durability and cardio issues are going to lose him later minutes in these rounds, and I think that's ultimately going to lose him the fight. So when this fight gets later, I think that Song Yadong is going to take over and start landing with the power that he has, and probably finish Marlon Morice at some point, probably late second, late third round. So the pick for me is Song Yadong inside the distance. Next at 9,100, we've got Sadiq Youssef. He's fighting Alex Caceres this week. As of now, Yusuff is a decent favorite in this matchup. He's coming off the loss to Arnold Allen from a year ago, where he was also the favorite, and he's looking to get back on track in this spot. I expect a decent amount of people to get to Yusuff this week, and I'm telling you right now, it is a trap. This is exactly the kind of fight that Alex Caceres wins. We picked Bruce Leroy last time out when he fought Sung Woo Choi for the same reasons that we're going to pick him this week against Sadiq Youssef. Caceres is up against a young, powerful striker who really isn't looking to mix it up. He's not really looking to get this fight to the mat at all. And I'm struggling to figure out what makes him a 2-1 favorite in this fight. Yes, he has solid power and he throws a lot of strikes, but if that's it, that's not enough to beat Alex Caceres. Caceres has fought professionally since 2008. He's been in the UFC, or at least with Ultimate Fighter / UFC since 2010. He's as experienced as they come, and he looks like he's still firmly in his fighting prime at only 33 years old. The footwork on the outside of Caceres, I think, is going to be a huge difference maker in this fight. I expect Yusuff to be the one marching forward for most of it. Caceres is going to lean on his lateral movement, stay out of trouble, and use that to frustrate Yusuff. I can also see Caceres stealing minutes of these rounds this way, and having success in the clinch when they come together. So the pick for me for this fight is Alex Caceres by decision. And next at 9,000, we have Drew Dober. He's fighting Terrance McKinney this week. Sorry, the evil Kunith was coming out because we're getting plus money on T-Rex again. Come on, let's go. Feels criminal when you can get somebody like T-Rex for as cheap as you can this week. I will say Drew Dober is solid everywhere. He's got a good gas tank, fast, powerful hands, good chin, which he should have considering that panoramic jaw. But clearly the biggest hole in his game is his grappling. We've seen him submitted several times in the UFC, and in his last fight against Brad Riddell was able to get him down several times. And this is where McKinney is going to thrive. The only thing making McKinney an underdog here, in my opinion, is that the fight is on short notice. But if you remember, he was asking to fight just 2 weeks after an easy W over Faraz Ziam, where T-Rex did show that grappling ability, so he's probably in good shape and probably ready to go. I think that Terrance McKinney is going to start the fight the same way, shoot for a takedown right away, and I think he's going to be able to get it. And once this fight hits the mat, McKinney should be in full control. I do worry about the gas tank of McKinney just a bit because we know that Dober can go the full 15 minutes. So if McKinney gasses out looking for the finish early, Dober could take over late and find a finish of his own, but I don't see that happening. I think that Terrance McKinney gets the finish in this spot by submission inside the first or second round. Next at 8,900, we have Alex Pereira. He's fighting Bruno Silva this week. If this fight goes the distance, I'll delete the channel. One of these guys, for sure, is going to get some great rest in the octagon on Saturday night. This is essentially going to be a kickboxing match, so obviously we're going to go with one of the best kickboxers to ever do it in Alex Pereira. And this is a perfect fight for the UFC to make, because if Pereira wins, he's 1 or 2 fights away from fighting for the title, and if Silva wins, he beat the guy who knocked out Adesanya, so he's probably pretty close to the title as well. But I expect Alex Pereira to pick up a win here, and it's likely a first-round knockout. Bruno Silva, while more experienced in MMA, isn't going to be looking to grapple at all. He's actually going to look to stand. He's supremely confident in his striking. He has 19 professional knockouts. And he's so confident in his striking that he's not afraid to take one to give one, but Alex Pereira is not the kind of guy that you can take one from. I expect Pereira to be able to read him like a book. I don't see Bruno Silva showing Alex anything that he's never seen before, and I think we're going to see that signature left hook inside the first round and end the fight. So the pick for me is Alex Pereira by knockout. Next at 8,800, we have the UFC debut of Azamat Murzakanov. He's fighting Tafon Chukwi this week, and this is probably another fight that's not going the distance. I expect Murzakanov to run through Tafon Chukwi this week. Coming into the UFC, we looked at Chukwi as a destroyer. We expected big knockouts, highlights, and truly he's been disappointing. He didn't even finish Mike Rodriguez. Murzakanov is an undefeated beast out of Russia who's been trying to get a fight since his first round knockout on Contender Series. He's been scheduled to fight multiple times. Each time his opponents have pulled out, and some of these fights have been at heavyweight. So he is just chomping at the bit to get some kind of UFC action, and we finally see him make his debut in a very favorable matchup against Tafon Chukwi, who's going to be there to be hit. I expect Murzakanov to light him up on the feet and find the finish inside the first or second round. And at 8,800, I'll probably have him in my lineups as well. So the pick for me is Azamat Murzakanov inside the distance. At 8,700, we have another debut of Javid Basharat. He's fighting Trevin Jones this week. There's a lot to like about Basharat coming into this fight. He's 5'9", bantamweight, undefeated, never gone the distance, and he's fighting out of a good gym. This could be a big coming out party for him in this spot. Trevin Jones is pretty low output, and I think that he was really exposed in his last fight against Sadykhub Krakhmanov. It was the footwork and the grappling of Krakhmanov that gave Jones serious trouble, and I think we see more of that this week if Basharat is able to stay out of harm's way on the feet and find takedowns of his own. And considering that he's making his UFC debut, that may hold his ownership down, but with the way that the pricing is on this card, I could definitely see myself getting here as well. Next at 8,600, we have Chris Moutinho. He's fighting Guido Canetti this week. I don't even need to show you. This looks like a fight you would see on the Bellator prelims. I don't think either of these guys are really UFC caliber. Moutinho will forever be known as the guy who Sean O'Malley smashed over the course of 3 rounds. And Guido Canetti is just an elderly man that the UFC rings up once a year to lose fights. I think that Chris Moutinho probably wins a decision here, but I don't really feel strongly about it, and if he does, he probably doesn't pay off his salary. So I'm not looking to target this fight, but the pick for me is Chris Moutinho by decision. At 8,500, we have Jillian Robertson. She's fighting JJ Aldrich this week. She should have a big grappling advantage in this fight, and if the fight goes to the ground, we know that she's always live for a submission. Robertson has stayed busy honing her best asset outside of competition by competing in jiu-jitsu contests, and JJ Aldrich likes to wrestle in spots as well, but I think we could safely say that Robertson is probably going to be the stronger grappler here. Another reason I like Robertson is because Aldrich doesn't have a whole lot of finishing upside. Robertson doesn't need to really respect her power, and I don't think she needs to worry about submissions from bottom after she gets her takedowns. I expect Robertson to have a good game plan coming in, and I expect this to be a one-sided decision win for her. So the pick for me is Jillian Robertson by decision. At 8,400, we have Camilla Kirk. He's fighting Damon Jackson this week. This is a tough one because on one hand, Damon Jackson is a solid grappler who can find submissions in a snap, and Camilla Kirk is an all-action guy who will likely have the striking advantage in this spot. And while Kirk is the favorite now, I could see this line swing hard throughout the week and make it closer to a pick'em by the time the fight starts. I'm going to go with the grappling of Damon Jackson to be the big difference maker here, and I wouldn't be surprised if he found a submission at some point. Makwan Amirkhani was able to take Kirk down at will while he was still fresh, and I think Jackson's jiu-jitsu game is a bit more refined and diverse than Amirkhani. So if Jackson is able to get this fight to the ground, he's going to be in his world, and I think we're going to see him finish this fight. So the pick for me is Damon Jackson by submission. Next at 8,300, we have Dolce Lungimbula. He's fighting Cody Brundage this week. Dolce Lungimbula has big power for the division, and he actually used to fight at light heavyweight, but at 5'8", that's pretty tough. He has moved down to middleweight, and he's had some mixed results since then. I expect him to actually struggle this week as well. I think the grappling of Cody Brundage is going to be a big difference maker in this fight, just like the grappling of Damon Jackson in the last fight. And while Dalcha is dangerous on the feet, he doesn't really throw that much. He doesn't take many chances, and he is there to be hit himself. But Brundage should be able to land punches on the feet and use that to open up his wrestling to get this fight where he needs it. So this seems kind of like a striker versus grappler matchup, and we normally do our best when picking the grappler. So the pick for me for this fight is Cody Brundage by decision. Now at 8,200, we have Karl Roberson. He's fighting Khalil Roundtree this week, and I expect a decent amount of people to be targeting this fight. Now both these guys are primarily looking to strike, so this should be a fun, competitive fight either way. What's interesting about this fight is Roberson is coming up to light heavyweight where he started his UFC career, and in recent years he has struggled making middleweight, so we could see a better version of him in this fight. Roberson has had issues with grapplers in the past, but he doesn't really need to worry about that in this spot. Roundtree does not shoot for takedowns. I don't think he's secured a single takedown in his UFC career, and Khalil Roundtree isn't the most defensively sound, so I actually like Roberson in this fight. What's more is I expect the more popular play in this fight to be the other side, to be Khalil Roundtree. He's a popular fighter, people like playing him, but I think that Karl Roberson in a pure kickboxing match should have success, and at 205 pounds, I like to see what we'll get from the 31-year-old. Now I'm going to get into the plays at 8,000 and below, but before I do, I watched the new Batman yesterday. You have 5 seconds to subscribe if you're not subscribed, or I'm going to spoil it for you. I'll give you a second. Okay, time's up. I wouldn't actually do that. I'm not that kind of guy. And I think you should subscribe anyway because I decided to spare you just then. But at 8,000, we have Khalil Roundtree. Again, I expect more people to play this side of this fight than Karl Roberson. And in hindsight, when you look at his wins over guys like Bukowskis and Anders, I mean, these really aren't high-level strikers. For these to be your signature wins, I'm really not sold. I'm not convinced. My mind could change on that later in the week in the final pick, so make sure you look out for that video. But I think that Karl Roberson has got this one. At 7,900, Cody Brundage looks like good value. Yes, he lost to Nick Maximov, but we know that Maximov is a strong grappler. We saw that against Punahele Soriano. So if Cody Brundage can get his grappling going, win a decision, I think that he's a solid play at 7,900. Damon Jackson at 7,800. I just think that he's going to have a huge grappling advantage in this spot, and I think that he's good value here at 7,800. JJ Aldrich, I think there is value here. If she's able to get the better of the wrestling exchanges somehow, then she's going to have success. And on the feet, if she's able to stay on her horse and be hard to hit, she can also have success there. But early in the week, I prefer the other side of that matchup. Guido Canetti, I'm really not interested. 5-star Jones, I'm not interested. Tafon Chukwi, I'm really not looking to play him. I mean, anything could happen, but I really don't expect him to get the job done in this spot. Bruno Silva is very, very live for the knockout against anybody that he fights. Terrance McKinney, T-Rex at 7,200. I mean, what more could you ask for? And if they want to keep doing this, they want to keep giving us this super talented kid at low prices, I will take it all day long. Alex Caceres at 7,100. I do expect him to win this fight. I think that this is just another situation where he gets overlooked. Look in his last fight, second round submission. This fight wasn't even all that close, and he was priced at 7,000. Bruce Leroy, forever slept on, but this man is a true martial artist through and through, and I think that he deserves more respect than what he's getting on this line. AJ Fletcher, it's really hard for me to bet against anybody who's had a massive reach disadvantage like that. I once saw this video, I forgot where it's from, but this guy was breaking down the statistics about how often fighters with an 8-inch reach advantage win. It was something like 70-80% of the time they win, so it's hard for me to go against that with any kind of confidence, especially with somebody making their UFC debut. Down here, Sabine Mazzo, I mean, this fight really is going to go one way or the other, isn't it? She is either going to get put on the ground, dominated for probably all 15 minutes, or she's going to be able to keep it on the feet and light Miranda Maverick up. Either way, I think that the commentators are going to be commenting on one of these fighters' toughness before the end of the fight is over, because one of them is getting smoked. But Sabine Mazzo down at 6,800, she'll make a lot of things possible for you in your lineups. And then Thiago Maheda Santos at 6,600. Not even a fight that you're looking to stack. He threw 44 strikes against Johnny Walker and somehow won, which just goes to tell you what kind of level Johnny Walker is at. But imagine paying 8,800 for someone that scored 48 fantasy points. You'd be pissed. That's like you lost. You have 5 rounds to work and you scored as if you lost. And you won. That's nuts. But that's our first look at this slate. Make sure you tune in later the week so that you can go over our final picks. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you've liked the content at all, consider subscribing to the channel. Leave a like on the video. I appreciate you guys stopping by and watching week in and week out. This has been a ton of fun, and I couldn't be happier with the way that things are going. So thanks, and I'll see you later in the week.